We all know Gorefield, right? That lovable lazy feline, his endearing hatred of Mondays, his ravenous taste for lasagna. Plenty of people love this iconic cat. However, as you might have guessed from the thumbnail and title, this video will not be going over him, or him as you would know him formally. Instead, we'll be covering the internet-born mutation of Gorefield, the dash of algo known as Gorefield. Before we begin, firstly we must define exactly who or what Gorefield is, what codifies, what pertains, all that jazz. To this end, I have decided that for the purposes of this video, that Gorefield is any corruption of the Gorefield that is obsessed with John and or chases after him for whatever reason that may be. Many times is left unexplained anyway. Secondly, I will be limiting the amount of Gorefields I cover to original art, that being the ones designed by William Burke, lumpy touch videos, and choice selections from r/I'mSorryJohn. I do this to prevent things from going off the rails with a bunch of nonsense like creepypasta crossovers and stuff. You know, all that stuff like crossovers with Zalgo, Jeff the Killer, Slenderman. That's all fun and jazz, but you know, it gets out of hand. As far as I know, there aren't any strict or rigid rules of finding what a Gorefield exactly is, but I'm just using these for the confines of this video so this information is simpler to digest. With that out of the way, let's dive into the scaling. In the original 5 drawings, Gorefield displays an absolute superiority over John. He's shown being able to restrain his whole body with one hand, though it is gigantic. He is also able to survive being shot in the eye with a pump-action shotgun. This even yielded his famous quote, "Bullets don't work, John." This can't be attributed to regeneration, as the wound remains constant in both the original artwork and the videos by Lumpy Touch. Also, a little fun fact, shotguns don't really shoot bullets. Instead, they typically use birdshot, a bunch of smaller pellets, buckshot, a few big pellets, or slugs, which are, for all intents and purposes, just a big bullet. Based on this, we see that these early forms of Gorefield are pretty solidly wall level in the least. The shotgun was able to slow him down somewhat, but not in any meaningful way. Now here we come across a bit of a discrepancy. In the Lumpy Touch video, John rigs an explosion in his house that absolutely destroys, and I mean destroys, seemingly everything in the area. Now I didn't really want to take the time to go and get this calculated, but just guesstimating it would be around building to city block levels of power. Of course, they were both scales of the full thing as they were both at the epicenter, with John surviving with no visible means of defense or help or shielding anything. So that probably means he should scale to the full thing if you should choose to use this feat. And of course, Gorefield earlier is able to hurt and kill John, so we can of course scale this to his AP as well. Personally, I prefer the latter interpretation as I really don't like outliers, but for your consideration I've included the first alternate viewing. Now onto the juicy bit of this first section, the statement that the world is going to end, John, from Gorefield himself. Now the way I see it, there are 3 ways to look at this. 1, Gorefield is going to systematically infect the world. 2, he wields the physical power to destroy the earth, whether that be in one strike or through a short amount of time. And lastly, the 3rd interpretation. This one I will save for later as it will be less crazy. Now with these 2 scenarios I've presented so far, the first one seems too unrealistic to me to be supported by the original drawings. In them, nothing really points to anything at all supporting Gorefield going to infect the world or even having that ability. In addition, giving more credence to the second option, the predictions that Lyman gives at the beginning of the video says that everybody is going to die. This, to me, essentially confirms that it cannot be the first option, as they will obviously still be alive if they got infected. Based on this, we can put this version of Gorefield in solidly tier 6 to 5 levels of power. This is broadly speaking, of course, as I don't know the specific level of power to destroy Earth in like a short amount of time that isn't in one attack, but still it's just a huge increase from the before that it needs to be noted. Now with that out of the way, we can go over the Horrorscope Gorefields that were introduced by Lumpy Touch in his original series. Understand, this is a 20-minute video, so there's of course a lot of stuff to go over. However, since most of these Gorefields do not have impressive AP feeds, but do have good hacks, I have gone through and taken all the necessary info for all the Gorefields. Coupled with this, I have also put alongside them the screen of their revealing, I should say, you know, the little info box that they have alongside them. So I'm just going to leave those about, and if you have any doubts about what was left out, please consult me in the comment section, and I have no qualms looking over it. With that out of the way, we can now start to hone in on some of the big hitters in this group for the AP. Now, Taurus and Ophiuchus are without a doubt the strongest Gorefields in this series. We see that Taurus sets the metric at galaxy level by literally being described as the size of an entire galaxy. So yeah, you can see how things have gone so far from the building levels to possibly building block level power from the original Burke Gameboy'd series. However, even Taurus is completely outclassed by Ophiuchus, also known as Garf. Garf sits at number 1 on the power rank, sitting as the most powerful of his kind, that being the Horrorscope Gorefields. In his judgment of the planet, Garf is shown being able to completely vaporize the Earth. This is to the point where it is completely disintegrated, leaving only a few traces of dust left. Afterward, he states that he was going to remake the entire world in his image. Now, looking at the facts so far, that being him scaling far above Taurus, we can infer that when he says the world, he's referring to the universe itself. This is also evidenced by the fact that when we next see Garf, the Earth is completely reformed and the entire animation style itself is different. He even also takes up a new title, Gorefield. This brings the maximum scale up to a whopping low universal plus AP and durability, and also grants him a nifty little creation ability as well. Now, you remember when I was talking about that third interpretation before? Well, yeah, when he says he was going to destroy the world, it possibly meant universe. I saved it until after this because it seemed kinda unlikely without this context. Now, moving on. Here, we can finally start to get into Rojom's Gorefield pieces. His are a personal favorite of mine because they are drawn in such a Lovecraftian way, and they depict Gorefield as this cosmic entity. Accompanying these drawings are captions that dive deeper into the lore of this series. Much like the horoscopes, not all of these Gorefields contain interesting information that might be pertinent. Therefore, just like I did with them, I'll be taking the information from those I deem relevant to this video. So without further ado, let's get into the scaling. In actuality, all the Gorefields in the series are one and the same, as confirmed by one of the upcoming pieces. Therefore, I will refer to them as such, differentiating them by their incarnations. To start, the twisted Garfield incarnation of Gorefield haunts John by seemingly devouring all the food in his fridge. The cause for his never-ending hunger is clear, his infinite stomach. As you can see, it spirals into the way beyond. This by itself is amazing, as Gorefield can incarnate himself into a being with infinite mass and magnitude with little to no effort, as we can see. In the same vein as the previous incarnation, Avaricious Garfield, quite possibly the first going by the story, follows the same shtick of an insatiable glutton with an endless belly. The Divine Garfield incarnation is unique in the series, as instead of being written conventionally, this piece is subtitled with a poem. In the poem, we see that Gorefield is able to exist even when the world is gone. This gives Gorefield possibly a form of abstract existence. The next form, Enlightened Garfield, is described as omniscient. This is supported by another incarnation of his, Celestial Garfield, claiming to have the truth. Given that the truth he has pertains to John's overarching situation at the situation at large, it's safe to co-sign his omniscience. Speaking of Celestial Garfield, he has one of the most impressive feats in the entire lore. He was able to create an infinite realm containing at least 1,000,000 billion stars. Now, of course, this isn't as impressive as creating an infinite universe, but let that figure just sit in your head for a while. That's at least 1,000,000,000,000 stars, 15 zeros. And that's not all. When he speaks, the sound is heard everywhere around John and even within him, making his very soul shake. So even in that little bit of description, we get possible omnipresence and soul manipulation. And let's not forget the fact he was able to conjure up the illusion in the first place for normalcy for John, before he started to question reality, of course. He is also so huge that when he moved, stars turned into literal dust. With his magnitude of reality warping, you might be thinking that this is the strongest version of Gorefield out there. However, I assure you we've only scratched the surface so far. Vain Garfield was able to attach himself to John and inject ecstasy into him at his own discretion. The description for Sloth Garfield simply states, when Garfield knows no bounds, his depictions are also limitless. However, in this regard it is likely referring to the many forms and incarnations he takes rather than any measure of power. Demon Garfield is straight up described as omnipotent, so this possibly means that this incarnation is either equal to or quite possibly superior to the Celestial Garfield that we previously covered. Now on to Gorefield the Creator, things get insane. This piece is a parody of the creation of Adam, and it shows. The description on this one imitates the style of the book of Genesis, the first book of the Bible. Here, it starts with the seventh day. From here, we can somewhat infer that Gorefield did all that was done in Genesis prior to this day. So, off the bat, we have the creation of all the laws in the universe, of physics and concepts and stuff as light and stuff. So, that's already quite impressive. All of this is supported by him being able to create Monday in the very same passage. Monday, of course, being an abstract concept. Not to mention that Gorefield would have to have existed before anything at all had existed, giving him immortality and abstract existence. Gorefield also has some degree of fate manipulation, as he was able to doom John to forever deal with Gorefields, no matter what. Now all of this is well and good, of course, but it mostly seems like stuff we've seen before, right? Wrong. Take a look at this. This here seemingly implies that Gorefield created all of his other incarnations, as I've said before, thereby meaning he transcends them fully. Remember, this includes Demon Garfield and Celestial Garfield. So what does this all mean? Well, Gorefield created this macrocosm, which judging by the number of Gorefields, contains around 15 Gorefields. Give or take a few depending on if some Gorefields are the same ones with different names, but it should be close to that figure. Now they each reside in their own universe. We know this because the Gorefields' universes contradict each other way too many times and overall just have too many discrepancies that can't be explained without this model. Given that Gorefield transcends 4D beings like Celestial Garfield, because again, going by that Genesis narrative, Gorefield is outside the fourth dimension to be able to create concepts like time and space and a Gorefield on this level. This gives Gorefield a fifth dimensional existence, minimum, assuming no other dimensions exist. So there you have it, Tier 1 Gorefield. So in my quest of madness, I was able to finally find the strongest, most powerful Gorefield out there. Finally, the nightmare is over. But is it? I can only imagine what a composite Gorefield would look like.